This is VSiN By The Books on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We are back, VSiN By The Books, as we begin our number 3. Dave Ross here, Circus Sports Fabulous, Las Vegas, Nevada. Our host, he is Jensen Lewis, our closer, back in Cleveland, Ohio. And Jensen, we love when we get to catch up with our guy, Billi Bhatti. But normally, Billy is overseas in England, and I don't know the time difference, but he's kind enough to come to the United States and is now in studio to begin our number 3. Billy, great to have you in studio, my friend. How is the time difference for you from overseas, coming over the big pond to the West Coast? Is it different on the body clock?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, first thing I said when I came in is that I have a new appreciation for these guys. Picks hit or they don't hit. Like, they still have to get up and do this. And it was torture this morning. I just got used to it. I've been getting up anyway about 3, 4, and it just stopped because I started in LA and came over to here from LA to Vegas, and I've just got used to it now. And it was brutal getting up today. Yeah, now that I'm in sync, now that I've had some late nights, been to some shows, tried to stay up at 1 a.m. Yeah, it was hard.
See, Jensen, he's doing your rule of thumb, right? You just stay on the time zone, and eventually the body, when you get back to your place of origin, you'll get right back to your old regime.
No doubt about it, Billy. You're doing it right. True pro. Never a doubt that you would do that. By the way, tell everyone you're in town, obviously, for WrestleMania. I know we'll talk some soccer here coming up, but everything you've got your hands into while you're in Vegas, what you got for us?
Yeah, so I am predominantly here for WrestleMania. So I have a kid with me who's in the hotel room right now, which has limited this from being the usual trip for Vegas. I have friends here, like posting their photos on social media, whatnot, having the Vegas trip that you should have. But I'm having a different one. I actually watched the comic that came on before Carrot Top yesterday. Was saying why do you bring the kid to Vegas? Who are these idiots who bring kids to Vegas while I'm sitting there with a kid in Vegas right now? But yeah, we're here for WrestleMania. This is my 18th one that I've been to since 2005. Interestingly, the first time you could ever bet on the WWE was when Caesar's Palace hosted it in 1993. These were the first ever lines they put up, and they took them down after a day because the fans were going crazy for them. Like, it was almost it was overbet. And there's actually a documentary about it right now on Peacock, the first time WWE came to Caesars. But now wrestling lines are widely available. Limited, obviously, especially if you start winning. If they see your account is winning regularly, you'll be limited quickly.
Well, let's talk about that very quickly here, because again, WrestleMania going on this weekend right here in Las Vegas, Billy. And my old buddy there, CM Punk from Chicago, he's gonna be there with Roman Reigns in a triple threat match, and Paul Heyman versus Seth Rollins. And then you see the card that's on there. Is there anything that you're actually going to wager on for WrestleMania?
Yeah, a couple of things here. When we look at night one side of things, Jey Uso, last time I looked, was a heavy favorite. I mean, these lines are different wherever you look. There's a number of books that are doing this, but they have slightly different lines. Here in particular, you have Rey Mysterio versus El Gran Americano. Now, this is El Gran Americano is a guy who's mocking the luchador Mexican wrestlers.
Oh, we don't do that, Billy.
He's an American under a mask. It's really a guy called Chad Gable who was losing to the Mexican mask wrestlers and decided to be one. Now, I think that he will win this match, and it will lead to a mask versus mask match. There's no drama if Rey Mysterio immediately wins. So El Grande Americano is a live underdog to me. The main event there on night one, Punk, Reigns, and Rollins, this has been all over the place. This guy, Paul Heyman, he's normally Roman Reigns' manager. Mm-hmm. He was CM Punk's manager from 2011 to 2013. He's still CM Punk's best friend. So CM Punk was owed a favor for being Roman Reigns' tag team partner in another match earlier on in the year. And now his favor was to take Reigns' manager. So Paul Heyman's going to be in his corner. I think the twist here is that he's not going to choose between Roman or Punk. He's not going to go with his old guy or his old guy. That he's going to have a brand new guy, and he may go with Seth Rollins. And the market's moving in that direction as the TV starts to tease that turn might happen. So Rollins for me is the live dog in that one.
That's phenomenal, Billy. Really good stuff. Cannot wait to see how this all plays out. Speaking of, we usually get to have you for some breakdown of not only the Premier League, but Champions League. First one I want to ask you about Aston Villa, Newcastle. Both teams kind of fighting there for champions berth coming up next season. How do you handicap this match coming up?
This one is really, really difficult to handicap, but it should be, because it's the most important game of the weekend. Aston Villa can take a massive chunk out of the edge that Newcastle have for. And as I said, as I appeared on these shows before and said, the market will say top four. And that's usually what we look at. It's always a phrase we say, you've got to finish in the top four. You've got to finish in the top four. This usually means Champions League. The exception is if you're in one of the two top countries in Europe who are overperforming in the existing Europe competitions. That means that you'll get 5 spots. So it's now the top 5 for the Champions League, but Villa are still on the outside looking in. So this is an absolute must-win game for them. I just wonder if the midweek game, almost turning it around against PSG, was too emotional for them. Whereas Newcastle, they've overcome that big emotional win in the Cup. They won the Cup and it didn't faze them. They actually used that as a momentum builder and have just steamrolled through the league since then, and are now firmly rooted in a position where they're going to qualify for the Champions League as well. It's going to be a phenomenal season for Newcastle if they win a trophy, which they hadn't done for decades, and they did that, and now they get back in the Champions League as well.
Talking to Billi Bhatti, enjoying the conversation here in studio. Give him a follow on X at SGP Soccer, as I do. Joining us here, Progressive Guest Line. And Billy, when you look at Everton against Man City here, speaking of that Champions League spots there, Man City could use those 3 points this weekend against Everton. Will they get that done?
It's a really odd one, because usually at this stage of the season, I'm looking at a team like Everton and I'm thinking that they're on the beach. We use that phrase. And what it means essentially is you can't get into the European places, but you can't be relegated. There's 6 or 7 games to go. So you're thinking about where you're going on holiday at this point. That's not the case here, because Everton play at Goodison Park. Goodison Park is done at the end of the season. They're moving to a new ground. It's a dated stadium, but it's really great to go to. I went to it a couple of years ago. It's all still made of wood and everything. They never developed it, so it is a great place to visit. So that's why I think they are still getting up for every single game. Ooh. Every single game is an emotional high spot, especially when a big team like City comes to town. And I think that Everton could turn up here and avoid a defeat. So if you can go against Man City, so you could take the other side of that, which would be plus half a goal, that would simply be Everton to avoid a defeat in what is a difficult place for Man City to go to. Man City have been a flat track bully this season. They have been able to beat the weaker teams. They have been managed to do that. But anytime there's a step up in competition, they've ultimately failed consistently so far this season.
Yeah, Billy, it's been kind of crazy to see Man City in this spot in the table, just where they've been. A place that we know is basically it's the coronation about to happen. I think Liverpool, right where they're going to be against Leicester, a chance to clinch it in this match. How impressive you been with just the overall season for Liverpool and just how dominant they've been at the top of the table?
Well, as I sit here in my Manchester United jersey on, after we had the most... I was at Tom's Sports Bar and I settled the bill at 4-2. I was had I paid my bill quicker, I wouldn't have seen Man United win. That's what was happening there. But yeah, it's hard to talk positively about Liverpool. But what can you say? Like the transition from Klopp to Arne Slot has been unbelievably smooth without really doing any business whatsoever. He just looked at what he had, made a few tweaks, and the tweak was really simplistic. It was like, we just basically conserve way too much energy early on in the season. We're doing too much in these games. We don't need to be this high intensity. He's basically made Liverpool... They haven't lost their intensity entirely, but it's a lot more periodic, which is why you have a lot more in the legs at this point in the season. I mean, that kind of loses a little bit of weight because they did exit the competitions that they exited. But if you look at the manner of they lost a penalty shootout to Paris Saint-Germain, fielded a really weak team against Plymouth. They overlooked Plymouth in the FA Cup. So, and then off the back of losing to PSG, the next game was Newcastle. So for me, that was a poor scheduling spot as well. So I'm sitting here making excuses for a team that I absolutely hate, but you have to be like fair when you're doing things in sports betting. Here against Leicester, they're coming up against a team who have 9 defeats in their last 10 games. They've lost each of their last 8 home games by at least 2 goals. Now you're coming up against a team who are in a clinching scenario, and the best attack in the league. So for me, I think Liverpool win here quite comfortably. I think they'll cover a -1.5 goal handicap and be another team who win by 2 or more goals.
We only have about 45 more seconds here, Billy. But when you look at what you're going to see at WrestleMania, and this is something that you do and have gone to so many of these, which fight can you not wait to watch? Is it Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair? Ric Flair was here on the premises yesterday. What fight can you not wait to watch?
I'm interested in that night 1 main event. Both the main events across night 1 and night 2. You've got Cody Rhodes versus the new bad guy John Cena, something that we thought we'd never see on night 2. But night 2 for me is a weaker card overall. More of the interest for me lies with night 1. But yeah, I think the tickets are being sold. Most of the people here in Vegas have come to see John Cena as a bad guy. And John Cena is the favorite to win that. I wouldn't be 100% sure that Cena is going to win. I think Cena will win, but for me, the last time I saw the odds about -200, I think that's too short. Cody's the future of the company. John Cena's even turned around and said that you're a bootleg version of me. And it's very difficult to see the old guy calling the new guy the bootleg version of him and then winning.
Great to have you in studio. Enjoy Las Vegas, my friend. We'll catch up again. And anytime you're in town, you're always invited.
You're tuned in to VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We are back, VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross and Jensen Lewis. A lot of fun having Billi Bhatti in studio in the last segment. Going to go out to California, catch up with Jonathan Davis in the next segment. So we still have a lot more to get to here. And, of course, our best bets before we say goodbye for this week's edition of VSiN By The Books. But let's get back to the NFL draft because we're knocking out each and every team here before we get to next Thursday's draft. So we keep moving right on down the draft board. Let's get to 16 here. In the Arizona Cardinals, an intriguing team out west. Their win total sitting at 8.5. It is juiced to the under -$1.20. That might be out of respect for how good this division could be with the Niners and the Rams and even the Seahawks. To win the division, 6-1. To win the NFC, 35-1. You got a pick in 16th. You got a 47th. You got a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick. Don't have a 6th, but then you have a 7th-round pick. 1 pick in each draft. Boy, this team feels like they're getting closer, Jensen, but they can also be a bit of fool's gold. What do you see with Kyler Murray? What do you see here with this team overall? And where does the help go? Does it go to Kyler first?
I think that it has to go to the defense, right? And you mentioned the division. I think that's where you got to kind of look at being able to compete not only just there, but also the top heaviness that we believe the NFC will run back this year. You look at where the NFC East is, and not only getting into the field, but also being able to advance. So similar fashion here, we've seen Arizona kind of sputter at ends of years, and the defense get a little bit leaky. So if they could address that initially, you look at the picks that they have, and right through the top 3, you could envision, them going into probably more the linebacking room, right? Defensive line is pretty solid at this point. We know they need kind of a complement there to Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's again, not taking anything away, from Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch, but they got one of the preeminent tight ends in our game now, just signed to a long-term deal, and Trey McBride, so they're covered there. We know the mobility of Kyler Murray. He'll use his legs as well as anybody. James Conner has been pretty consistent. You get Trey Benson, also another year of experience there. So I think a receiver at some point, maybe it is in round 2. Maybe they look more to defense in round 1. I looked at Jalen Noel, speaking of receivers from Iowa State, and I don't think as Isaiah Bond gets that far out of Texas, but 2 guys that could complement, right? I mean, you have the unicorn, if you will, in Marvin Harrison Jr. Not the season we expected from him last year, but I think he bounces back in a big way. To me, Dave, if you're going to win this division, limit a Rams offense that we think is still going to be very good. Also looking at the steps forward, obviously that San Francisco could take in revamping it once they get the Brock Purdy extension done. And then let's see what Sam Darnold does in Seattle. I know a lot of us kind of bagged on it with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett being out of there, but let's see what happens. But again, I think defense predicated not just for the division, but also to get through what we think could be a crowded top of the NFC.
And again, for their first round pick here at 16, look at this numbers market. And this tells you, and it's what we've gotten to with Thomas Gable and with Mike Palm and with Carl Johnson in weeks prior, how hard it is to really know what they're going to do at 16. To draft a D lineman and or edge, it's plus $1.75. Offensive lineman, it's plus $2. Corner, plus $3. Wide receiver, 6 to 1. Linebacker, 6 to 1. 5 betting choices, all at 6 to 1 or less. I mean, Jensen, we've seen teams that are, minus $3, minus $2.50, who they're going to, the position at least, in that first round. I think that tells us that the books do not know exactly what this team's going to do at 16. Again, we've talked about it too, the propensity maybe to, either trade up or trade down. When you're sitting literally right in the middle at 16, you're that fulcrum point that could happen here. If you get to this middle of the first round and all of a sudden maybe the player we wanted isn't there, we could trade out of that spot if somebody really wants it. I wonder if we might see activity right around, because we do traditionally around the middle part of this first round.
Yeah, it's a great spot to be able to do it. And also for teams that maybe wanting to trade down and see, if they could get into those teens. But also now we start to get into that area where do teams try and jump up, and what would they be doing it for? How far back? Like I'll give you an idea. How far back do you go if you're Arizona, knowing you've got to address a couple of these needs, and looking at where some of the projected picks are just from a defensive standpoint, seeing some mocks where we talked Mikael Williams could be there for Atlanta at 15, Jihad Campbell from Alabama, linebacker, Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M. There are a couple of really good opportunities from the defensive side. So now you kind of have that tightrope to walk if you're Arizona. They're going to get calls. I think we can safely say that they're going to get calls for teams that maybe want to jump up there or try and get back in. But also, how far do you slide back, potentially missing opportunities with the Bengals, the Seahawks, the Buccaneers behind you? You think about the Bengals, we know that they need to address defensive issues, so they'd be a team that could be highlighted for a defensive pick. The Buccaneers, similar fashion there. They could be that. And then you get to Denver at 20. Is that the first spot where could you see Arizona maybe slide back to 19 or 20 if a team has enough to entice them to do it?
I look at Jonathan Gannon, and this is going to be year 3 for Gannon out there in the Valley of the Sun. 12-22 in his first 2 years, so a little bit underwhelming, but really a reclamation project when he took it over. Remember back then, they thought Kyler Murray was injured and whether or not he was even going to be the quarterback here. As you go into year 3 with Gannon, and I guess Kyler Murray, he's kind of done an about face, and he does feel like he's going to be the long-term guy there. What do you make of that marriage? Because Gannon, obviously coming over, the former defensive coordinator for the Eagles, when they got to the Super Bowl and lost that close one to the Chiefs. The identity of this team, do they have one? Because I kind of feel like Shane Steichen, another former Eagle disciple under Sirianni, is starting to get under the microscope a little bit more in Indianapolis. Maybe it's because it's not working out with Anthony Richardson. But with here, it almost feels like it is working out, slowly but surely, that Gannon and Murray might be that combo for head coach and quarterback for a couple more years to come. Do you sense that he's actually in good standing despite being 10 games under 500?
Well, just remember that when they went to the bye week last year, they were 6-4.
Right.
Okay. And they had won 4 in a row. And it was no slouch here. Okay. They beat the Chargers at home. They go to Miami and they're able to win a very close game, 1-point game. And then the defense came to play against 2 lackluster offense, as we know, with the Bears and the Jets. So you talk about riding highs. You go from 2-4, all right, to 6-4, the bye week. Then all of a sudden it's into the division at Seattle. They lose kind of a wacky game there, low offense, and not really one of the better games overall. but then they go to Minnesota. That one, I think, is the one that ultimately, they should have won that one. So that would have gotten you back. And then you play Seattle again and lose at home. That's kind of where everything started to fall out. So the identity is there. I think now it's the execution from a defensive side. They add one more receiver because you already have McBride. We believe that Marvin Harrison is going to be better. Running attack is very solid with Connors and James Conner, and also with Kyler, and even Trey Benson if you need him to supplement it. Like, I think the offensive weaponry is plenty to be able to compete not only in that division but in the NFC.
I'm so glad you brought up those games in the middle towards the end of that year where they lost those 2 games to Seattle, and they were at a time before that losing stretch happened in Minnesota in those 2 games to Seattle. They were the favorites to win that division.
Yeah,
in the live betting market. So I think you're right. They might not be as far away. You know, the object in the rear view might be closer than they appear. I wonder if that's this team. And because I'm looking at Seattle, I know we're all looking at the Rams and the Niners to bounce back, but it could potentially really be, like it was last year, Jensen, a true 4-horse race in that division.
It may be the most competitive division in the NFC, and that's with all due respect to what we believe will be a very, very good NFC North too, right?
Yep.
And I think you kind of circle both those divisions. No disrespect to the East, but we just don't know if the Giants can hold their water. I mean, you would think that Ben Johnson has the troops ready in Chicago to make life hell for that divisional opponent schedule. Same thing could be said even with Seattle, kind of new facelift here with Sam Darnold and company. That's still going to be a tough out, no question about it.
I'd be if they went wide receiver at 16, and you pair that with Marvin Harrison, and he gets that better second. He was a good year, decent enough, but you really get him to explode in year 2, and you hit on the first-round wide receiver at 16. That could be a very interesting offense to break down next year. And I'll say this: if you like them to their win total over 8.5, you probably should play the 6-1 to win the division because 10 wins might be good enough to win that. So do that math. You're going to get over 8.5. You're already at 9. It might take you one more to get to 10. And I think 10-7 could be good enough in a really, really tough 1-4 division there in the NFC West. The draft, of course, it does start Thursday. We've already started here in the network, and we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage for you. 2 special shows breaking down every pick from a betting perspective. VSiN Primetime, the draft edition, starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by Cashing Out and their draft edition at 11 p.m. Explore our NFL Draft Hub on the VSiN Watch app, featuring exclusive analysis, team needs, and insights. Visit VSiN.com/draft for all of your coverage. Stream it now live on the VSiN Watch app. We did this last year. It was fantastic. It's going to be even bigger and better this year. Our draft coverage, wall-to-wall, right here on VSiN. Jonathan Davis talking some puck. That is next year, VSiN by the Books.
You're tuned in to VSiN by the Books, right here on VSiN.
We continue VSiN by the Books. Dave Ross, Jensen Lewis here on a Friday. We are all getting fired up. I think some would say the best second season in all of major sports, which is the NHL. I'm sure other people might take umbrage with that. Joining us now here in the Progressive Guest Line, is we always love catching up with Jonathan Davis. Follow him on X at West Coast Hockey. That's HKY. Does a great job here. If you're a VSiN Pro subscriber, you already know JD's got you covered with some of the best bets out there on the night on ice. Jonathan, how about that second season? Why is it so different in the NHL versus some of the others? Because it feels like in the NBA, you got to warm up until maybe you get to the finals in the respective conferences. For the NHL, it's game one. You drop that puck, and it does feel like a completely different year. Does that make it harder or easier to handicap for you?
I don't know if it necessarily makes it harder to handicap. I think, look, to answer your question about why things change, because guys want to have their name on the cup. I mean, it's the only trophy in professional sports where your name will be there for life. I mean, it's the most coveted trophy, and players, look, they don't get paid during the playoffs, but they lay it on the line like you see it in no other sport. And it's a grind. You've got to win 16 games to win it all. You're usually, most teams are playing, about 20 to 25 games to get there. There's a difference. There are players that get you to the playoffs And then there are other players that get you through the playoffs. And that's the big difference come Stanley Cup playoff time.
Yeah, JD, we always know that one of the narratives headed into these postseasons are the netminders, especially in hockey. And you mentioned laying it on the line. Guys don't get paid, but they wanted to play for the name on the front of the sweater in the Four Nations tournament. We get that in the first game tomorrow. We get Jordan Binnington, Connor Hellebuyck as the Blues and the Jets will kick things off. Pretty remarkable to see how both these clubs got into the postseason and where their years ultimately ended up. Size up this series for us in the first round.
It's very interesting. Look, the Winnipeg Jets are trying to erase some demons. They've been eliminated in the first round the last 2 years. Each time they won the first game of the series, and then they lost the next four. You know, we call it the gentleman's sweep. I don't know why they call it a gentleman's sweep. I hate that term, but regardless, you know, this is a big season for Winnipeg, you know, who led from start to finish. You know, Connor Hellebuyck has just had horrific playoffs. For the most part, Winnipeg is healthy. They are missing one of their top scorers, Nikolai Ehlers, and we do expect Gabe Vilardi to be back at some point. For St. Louis, you know, they're missing one of their top scorers, Dylan Holloway. The big thing for St. Louis is they got to stay out of the penalty box. They had the 28th ranked penalty killing unit in the NHL this year. The Jets had the best power play unit. So you got to stay out of the box. The way I'm approaching it, like I'm going to play the Blues in game one. The price is too good at plus 180, 188 for me to pass them up to win game one. The series, I'm not so sure. I haven't really decided. It's too big a price for me to play the Jets in the series. So I'll kind of take a little wait and see. There are some good series props that I posted up in an article I wrote today for VSiN.com that's out there. You know, the one interesting thing is that if you like this series to go long, and if you like it to go 7 games, you can make some good money, as you can see here on the board. If you play St. Louis to win in 7 and you play the Jets to win in 7, You're going to walk away with a profit. But for me right now, I'll take the Blues in game one and then kind of go from there.
Plus 650 if you like the Blues in 7, plus $4 if you like Winnipeg in 7. So I'm picking up what you're putting down there. JD, I'm just fascinated by looking at this Dallas and Colorado, the series prices here. Dallas, even though they have home ice, and even though they're plus 450 to win the West, they are the dogs in this series and in game one, plus $1.20 here to Colorado, who is 4-1 and one of the smaller betting choices here to win the Western Conference. Do you get the feeling that whoever wins this series should be the favorite to come out of the West?
Well, the one problem is they may be so battered and bruised after this series that it's going to be challenging whoever they face. But look, the Dallas Stars are a banged-up team. They're missing their best defenseman, Miro Heiskanen, you know, who's going to would normally eat up about close to 30 minutes of the 60 minutes of a hockey game. And that's a big loss. Jason Robertson, one of their leading goal scorer, he's out, or we're not sure how long he's out. He got hurt in the last game of the year, and that's a big concern. So now that's why we've seen a further adjustment to the line with this Dallas-Colorado series. I like the Avs before the series started. You know, there's some great storylines here. You've got Mikko Rantanen, the former Colorado Avalanche, who was traded to Carolina, but then gets traded to Dallas, and now he's got to face his former team in the first round. The Avalanche, to me, are just too deep. And I think, you know, you've got Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon on the Dallas side. I like the goaltending in Colorado. Jake Ottinger's been a good regular season goalie, but as Mike Palm, you know, he refers to him as, I think, fake Ottinger come playoff time. And so I do understand why Dallas or Colorado is favored, and I will take Colorado in this series.
All right, JD, you turned me on to a potential long shot here in the Western Conference in the LA Kings at 22-1. I did jump on them. Mentioned to you, I already had the Golden Knights at 18-1 in pocket. I also have the Avalanche at 13-1. We're pretty cornered, you think, in my book there for the Western Conference, and just kind of let it play out?
Yeah, I think you are. Absolutely. You know, Los Angeles has been, one of the best defensive teams. Obviously, you know, the best home record in the NHL. I do get, you know, the one concern I would have with LA is that if they eventually did meet Colorado, it's been a bad matchup for Los Angeles this year. I think the Avs definitely have the edge there. But hey, look, if that's the case, you're in a great spot because you've got both sides covered. Yeah, the only other team, you know, that I could see having value would be St. Louis, because I think that roster is built for the playoffs, and I think you can get them at 20-1. So they're the only, that'd be the longest of the long shots that I would play out of the West. But yeah, I don't think there's really a team, any of the three teams. I think all three teams that you have are the best three there. And the interesting thing for me is that you've got Winnipeg in the West and Washington in the East. They both are fourth on the odds board to win their conference and seventh and eighth to win the Stanley Cup. And they're the top two teams in the league. So that kind of tells you what Vegas feels about the two best teams in the regular season.
All right, JD, let's stay right there with the Caps because they are minus 330 to beat Les Habitants from Montreal. Now, some of us of an older age remember Yaroslav Halak and the Canadiens when they were the 8 seed, and maybe I was covering that series back then for the Caps as the 1 seed, and they win the President's Trophy, and then they lose in the first round in 7 games. Is there any chance that history repeats itself here almost, 15 years later? Here we are, the Caps as the 1 and the Canadiens at the 8. Is there any chance that happens again?
I absolutely think there's a chance that it happens. And this is more bet against Washington for me. Look, we've talked about before, their propensity to give up 3 goals or more down the stretch has been, I've highlighted many times. I think it's about 12 of the last 14 games they've given up 3 goals or more. Now, look, in fairness to Washington, their last 2 games they've been using their 3rd and 4th string goalies, but they've gone through a stretch, especially since the Four Nations, where it's been all about Alexander Ovechkin and not about playing structured hockey. So they're going to have to find a way to flip a switch. Montreal's been playing playoff hockey for really the last 2 months of the season. I don't they're not maybe as skilled as others, but that top line in Montreal is really good. I love their blue line. Their goaltending, I think, is just as good, if not better, than Washington. So at plus 260 to win the series, I think there's a lot of value there.
All right, JD, last one from me. We obviously love to see Game 7s throughout, and I hope we do get some of those scenarios regardless of what round it's in. Give me your final matchup in the Stanley Cup final and who hoists the cup.
Well, look, in the article I put out today, I've got leans to Vegas and Toronto, and it pains me to pick Toronto for a guy who grew up in Montreal, born in Montreal, and you hated the Leafs. But strictly from a price standpoint, I think they have a shot to make it to the final. I think I like the odds on Toronto. They've played both Florida and Tampa very well. The big question for me, the only thing that holds me back with Toronto is their 2 best players, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, have been guys that, I talked about guys that get you to the playoffs and get you through. Marner and Matthews have never been the guys that get you through the playoffs. That's my one concern. But strictly from a price standpoint, I do like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, those guys have got to be as good as they are in the second season for Toronto if they want to get through history here. They're fighting that too. Very quickly here, when we talk this time next week, what series is going to be the most compelling to you in about a week's time?
Well, my most compelling. I think it's going to be Los Angeles and Edmonton, only because the Kings are trying to exercise the demons of losing 3 straight years to the Oilers. I think they're in a better position this year to beat Edmonton. We're just not sure of the health of many of the Oilers right now.
JD, we always enjoy the conversations, my friend. Enjoy California. We'll catch up again next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Give him a follow. West Coast Hockey HKY. And there's a rumor maybe Jonathan Davis might be coming to Vegas for a game next week. See if we can get him in studio. When we come back, our best bets. They are next right here at VSiN By The Books.
You're tuned in to VSiN By The Books right here on VSiN.
Where has the time gone here on a Friday? VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross and Jensen Lewis. Great show here. Going to get to our best bets in a moment. Great conversation with Jonathan Davis in the last segment. And again, I think JD laid it out perfectly, right? Why the second season in the NHL is different. And it does feel different from all the others. Of course, you guys, Major League Baseball, you want to win that World Series. We know how important it is to everybody get their hands on that sticky Lombardi. Like my guy Brian McFadden says, he's got 2 of those as a Steeler guy. But having your name put in, and again, we see it in golf, right? Like the Open Championship, which I can't wait to talk about. They actually stencil in your name right there on the oldest trophy in golf. This, I think Jonathan's spot on. It is the Stanley Cup. Not only the most famous, but doesn't it feel like it does have the most gravitas of any of the trophies/awards that you can win out there in any sport?
I always marveled, and again, was fortunate enough to win a playoff series there my rookie year in 2007. We beat the Yankees in Old Yankee Stadium, and you got onto the ALCS. We lost in Game 7 to the Red Sox. What I find always fascinating in the hockey postseason, no one touches your conference trophy. No one touches it because it's such bad luck to touch the conference trophy. You only touch the Stanley Cup. Like, that to me is one of my favorite parts of watching the conference finals is, seeing the captain go over and, hey, cool. Nice. That's not the one we want. Thanks a lot. Same thing. You get, some runner-up stuff when you lose the World Series, but no one ever talks about that. It's not the thing. And so, playoff shares notwithstanding, I mean, you still get a boatload. I remember the check that I got. I'd never forget it, Dave, my rookie year. So you get playoff shares and escalating value the farther, each round that you go. And so losing in the ALCS, I wake up like a week before Christmas, Aaron Laffey, one of my teammates who made the playoff roster, he goes, "Hey, did you check your bank account?" I said, "No." He goes, "You might want to do it." And I looked there, I'm like, this is more money than I made the whole year combined. Like, this is unbelievable. Are you kidding me? So that notwithstanding, yes, it's about winning the ring in baseball. It's about hoisting the cup in hockey. Can't wait to see it get underway tomorrow night.
All right, that Prince of Wales trophy that you're talking about, because I wanted to Google it just to make sure my memory was correct. I was like, I do recall Sidney Crosby doing it, and it was like a controversy.
Oh, it's a huge,
right?
Huge problem. Oh, yeah.
So he did it. He touched it in 2016, in 2017, before the Pens did win the cup each of those seasons. Alexander Ovechkin did it in 2018, and the Caps also won the cup. So because that is instilled in my brain too, that you don't touch it. You don't touch the Prince of Wales. But if Crosby's done it twice, if Ovechkin's done it once, is that not enough to get that mystique away? Because there really is a stigma about touching that Prince of Wales trophy. Do you think the guys, now that precedent's been set, that we've broken the jinx forever?
I would not want that pressure on me. No, not as a team captain. I would want to err on the side of history and rather play the numbers. I'd rather play it by the books. There, Dave.
I see
That's
what I
would do.
By the way, Panthers didn't touch it last year. It is wild how that is a thing in the Stanley Cup Conference playoffs. Let's get to our best bets. They are brought to us by GBank, the official bank here of VSiN. And I think we're starting to target one game in particular, and I know what they're going to say. First rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. You got to talk about the Wind at Wrigley today with the D-backs in town. Cubs on the side, plus $1.07. D-backs, you want to lay $1.19, go right ahead. You want to play them on the run line, you're going to get plus $1.18. That's not what we're targeting here, Jensen. We're looking at Mother Nature, and what are we seeing?
Gusts upwards of 40 miles an hour blowing out. I am shocked that this number hasn't moved, just yet. And I hope we're getting the better of it here, because I've seen some guys to hit homer prices, Dave, at south of like 2.5 to 1.
Oh my!
It is mind-boggling. You're used to seeing maybe some of the average players being that 5 to 1, 6 to 1. Your judges of the world are going to be 3 to 1, maybe a little bit lower. Like, we're seeing Eugenio Suarez at plus 185, I think, on DraftKings at some places. Like, I'm going to go in right now. Here are your home run props. Eugenio Suarez is the shortest on the board at plus 165.
Come on.
Corbin Carroll plus 175. Seiya Suzuki plus 255. I can't believe Brandon's going to do this. This is the sweatiest no-run first inning you'll play so far this year. If you want any part of that, it'll be plus money. But I've never seen homer prices this short.
I think Brandon got plus $1.10 to play that do not pass on the craps table here, that there's no run scored in the first inning. Now you're finally getting plus money at that. But that is going to be a sweaty 6 outs if you can get through the first 3. I don't know. Do you like walk the dog? Do you watch? Because if you watch that, it's got to be torture. Because Jensen, we were talking about it with Jonathan Davis here during the break a little bit. Like as a pitcher, when you know it's blowing like that, what do you do at Wrigley Field to try to make sure the ball stays in the ballpark?
I mean, you got to really be good about getting the ball inside. To me, that's really the onus here, especially once you get into, that first time around the order is seeing because the hitters know it too. Right. They know that if I just got to lift it, I just got to get it up into the jet stream and it'll do the rest. So you may see, here's conversely, you may see some action early, guys, and, you get some rollovers or guys, swinging too hard. That to me is a recipe for you better get that ball in and you better keep it down. Otherwise, fly balls are just going to travel with the way the wind's blowing today.
Down and in. That's what you're going to get, or else you're going to get a lot of Major League. That ball's too high. What do you mean too high? I can't say the rest of the quote because of there were some curse words in there. Let's get to some of the other games here in the Diamond today with a lot of these new series starting today. Is there any other series or we broke it down a little bit in Daily Diamond today? And you mentioned you might like the Dodgers today with Yamamoto against DeGrom. You got to lay $1.35 here with the Dodgers, plus $1.14 with DeGrom. Is this a first 5 play, or is this one you think over the long haul because DeGrom's only going to go 5, you might like the Dodgers at the small price?
Yeah, it was an initial lean for me. No official play at the moment, but that was the kind of from the betting splits what jumped out. And knowing that DeGrom is going to be limited to 5 innings, that to me was more of a play on Dodgers can get to a Ranger bullpen that has a couple of soft spots there. Total's only at 8, and obviously that's predicated off of Yamamoto and DeGrom. I'll tell you the one that did stick out a little bit is the Padres. Remember, the Padres coming east now are going to be in Houston, so Middle America, but still are going to be away from home. You're going to have to lay a little bit on the run line, minus $1.70 right now, but plus 1.5 there. You know me, I like to do these minus ones, plus ones. Sure. So if you want to price it out, they are plus $1.24. The Padres are right now on the money line. But if you want a little bit more conservative approach, build that out to a plus 1. I think that's a good angle to go. Play I just locked in. The Red Sox at home, Battle of the Sox here. White Sox in town. Martin Perez is thrown quite well. Red Sox have not named a starter just yet, but I don't think it's going to matter. Minus 205 on the money line. I don't want any part of that. I will jump in on the Red Sox run line, minus 1.5 at even money. I think that could be maybe minus $1.10 by the time you get closer to game time here. So I do think that Red Sox offense continues to swing the bats well at home, and they get it done by 2 or more against the White Sox tonight.
In the last year, watching the emergence of the big lefty David Peterson for the Metropolitans has been wild. And I remember last year, he was like a 4-inning pitcher. He was a 5-inning guy. And then they started to stretch him out a little bit. And now he feels like a legit stud. I never thought I'd see a price point like this where David Peterson is $1.75. It's come down now, at least it's circa to $1.63, but it's $1.75 at DraftKings against Miles Michaelis here in the Cardinals. Is that too big a price? Because, boy, he has been so good over the last year plus since they've made him a legit starter. And now I look at him as a legit starter, yeah. not as like a middle guy stretched out to be a longer starter.
Yeah, boatload of money right now. So 88% of the bets, 90% of the handle there on your New York Metropolitans. So will be a stay away for the moment for me. But you're right. Just the way that rotation has answered the bell, and already with a couple of big injuries, to see them in first place with that attrition they've already had to overcome. Big reason, why they have been able to hold fast and be able to be at the top of the NL East. Yeah,
going to be interesting one today after getting game 1 yesterday against the Cardinals. G-Bank, by the way, is up the ante up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. New customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from opening up an account, they're going to get a $250 bonus right then and there. In addition, if you spend $50K on gaming and sports app loads within the first 30 days of opening up said account, you're going to get another $500 bonus. So again, do that math. That's potentially $750. Apply now, VSiN.com/GBank. That's VSIN.com/GBank. Subject to credit approval, terms and conditions do apply. Jensen, enjoy your weekend, my friend, back home in Cleveland. We'll do the same out here in Las Vegas. Don't go anywhere. A numbers game, Gil Alexander and Wyatt Tomchek today with Gil. That is next here on A Numbers Game.